Rising, Fight for Water. And if you'll indulge me for just a second, I'll read Neenma's biography. So Neenma is a multimedia journalist who works to amplify the voices of marginalized communities. She is a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. She is currently a California Local News Fellow, and she works as a multimedia journalist at the Sacramento Observer. She focuses on storytelling that highlights social justice issues, environmental challenges, and cultural resilience. In Nigeria, she produced the show Made in Niger and a documentary on period poverty. After moving to the United States, she continued her work with projects that included a documentary on Rosie the Riveter and a short documentary exploring the decline of salmon populations in the Bay Area. Her bylines can be found in the Los Angeles Times, the Sacramento Observer, the Napa Valley Register, Richmond Confidential, Mission Local, Cap Radio, and the East Bay Time, among others. Her work has earned her the Ida B. Wells Investigative Reporting Fellowship, and her thesis film, Allensworth Rising, explores environmental injustices in Allensworth, California. And if you're interested in watching the film, you can access it at pulitzercenter.org. Um, yeah, so Neenma, thank you for being with us today. Um, okay, I should probably tell you about the webinar features before we dive into this moderated discussion, because of course we want you all to engage. And we love that you're already active in the chat. So if at any point during the conversation that we're having with Neenma that you have a question, please use the Q&A function to pose your questions. You can also share notes and responses in the chat for us to share out. And the last point is not relevant to this webinar. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so that you can see Neenma. Hi, Neenma. How are you today?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad and grateful to be here. Thank you, Kendra.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you're here, Neenma. It's so great to finally be able to talk to you after communicating with you for months and having you travel across the country to share about your project, Allensworth Rising. So I have a few questions for you. Okay, are you ready to get started?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so first, can you please give us a brief overview of your reporting and speak to the ways in which your climate and environment story also connects to the issues of racism and human rights?
All right. So the name of my documentary is Allensworth Rising, A Fight for Water. And I worked on this documentary with my partner and friend, Isabella Marisban, who's also a great journalist. So this reporting focuses on Allensworth, a small historically Black town in California's Central Valley, Tulare County to be precise. And this town was founded in 1908 by Colonel Allensworth and a group of African American pioneers. They envisioned a self-sustaining community free from racial discrimination where African Americans can thrive and develop. And that's what they did. They developed that community with that goal, and it was achieved. However, over a century later, the same community is still fighting for something as basic as clean water. So Allensworth Rising, A Fight for Water, which is the name of the documentary, documents how environmental challenges like arsenic contamination and water scarcity intersect with racial inequity and systemic neglect. So this story follows residents like Sherry Hunter and the Castile family on how they try to get the arsenic out of the water. And they work alongside a researcher from Berkeley called Dr. Ashraf Gadgil. And he is developing or has developed a technology that can remove arsenic from the water. So we just document this whole process, and share the experiences of the people living in that town and how difficult it is to live in a town that, has arsenic in its groundwater. So that's the background of the film.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Neenma. And that inspired so many questions that I'll hold. and move on to our second. So, throughout this Global Connection series, we're discussing the ways in which historical context helps us to understand modern issues. So, what do readers need to know and/or understand about the community highlighted in your reporting to fully appreciate the story that you tell in the documentary?
Yes. So it's very interesting to note that Allensworth is actually the first Black town to be founded by Black people, financed by Black people. Um, and it's very interesting because Alan Allensworth, who was a colonel at the time, was born in Kentucky in 1842, and he was born into slavery. Um, After he, was able to escape from slavery during the Civil War, he joined the Union Navy and he rose to the position of chaplain. And this was also a historic moment because he's the first Black man to actually rise to that position. And, he continued his work there in the Union Navy and he realized that he wanted more for his community. So in 1908, he moved down here to California and founded Allensworth with other African American pioneers. And the idea was to find a community, to create a community where Black people can be free from racial discrimination of the Jim Crow South at the time, where Black people could thrive, where Black people could, just develop and live their lives free from any form of segregation. And that is exactly what Colonel Allensworth did. He developed this community and it was thriving. They had a school, they had a library, they had a dance club. It was just very, such a beautiful town at the time. But things began, to move backwards when he died in 1914, I think in a car accident, and everything just started to fall apart. Now, it's interesting to note that when Allensworth moved down to California to purchase this land from white farmers, at the time, it was stated that that land was not fertile. They did not say why the land was not fertile from the reports we read and the documents we saw. It just stated that it wasn't fertile. So the white farmers sold this land to Allensworth at a very, very low price. And he got that. And so it's interesting because arsenic wasn't even like founded in the groundwater until the 1960s. But from our reporting, we found out that arsenic has always been in the groundwater in Allensworth. It's a naturally occurring element in Allensworth. So yeah, that's the brief history of the town. So it's very important for us, as Black people to appreciate our history and the fact that it's the first town in California to be financed, founded, and governed by Black people. Now that's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And part of this rich legacy tradition of self-determination amongst Black people. Uh, and the historian in me is very excited. So again, I'm going to try to stick to the questions that we have prepared, but I have so many more for you, Neenma. So the next question is, what learning or research did you have to do when shaping your story? What takeaways do you have from this project?
Um, that is so interesting. Thank you for that question, Kendra. Um, Learning about Allensworth was such an interesting experience and life-changing experience for me and my partner, Isabella Marsban. We immersed ourselves in both like the historical and scientific sides of Allensworth's story. We studied archival materials about the town's founding, the early prosperity, and the eventual decline. We also researched, the environmental data on groundwater contamination. We had to talk to scientists, researchers. Um, and we also tried to learn a bit about the Central Valley water systems to know how that also affects Allensworth. It was a lot of research, and speaking with residents, scientists, advocates helps us to understand how deeply personal the crisis is in Allensworth. And my biggest takeaway from all of this is that climate stories are human stories. Like we cannot separate one from the other. It's not just about the climate, it's about the impact it has on humans, right? So behind every statistic we see about contaminated wells or, arsenic, there's a family that's impacted. It's not just the numbers. There are people, actual people going through serious issues. And it's another key learning from me about, through this reporting is that community-led solutions matter because that's something I really understood through Allensworth. The community members, the residents, they take so much agency. They're so resilient. They're so hardworking. They're so consistent in their fight, and they stand up for themselves. Now, residents aren't waiting to be saved by the government, which I mean, isn't the always, it's not the right, thing. But sometimes we also have to stand up for ourselves, and they've understood that. And they're partnering with experts like Dr. Asha Gadgil and demanding systemic change. So for me, that blend of scientific innovation and grassroots activism is what really inspired me that this is where hope really lies for the community.
Beautiful. Um, and Neenma, what can people in other communities learn and apply from this story? And what changes locally and more broadly do members of the impacted community want to see?
That is very interesting. I think first of all, something that people can take away is that local empowerment matters and it works. Our voice matters. We have to speak up. We have to stand for ourselves. Um, when residents take ownership of their own challenges and build partnerships, change becomes possible. There's nothing that you cannot achieve when you come together and work towards a certain goal. And that's something I learned from my reporting on Allensworth. Another thing I learned is that history matters. History is super important. We cannot move forward without knowing the past. It's just impossible. We need to know our past to move forward. So history matters, and understanding the roots of environmental inequity helps us to build fairer and more sustainable solutions. And the final thing I learned, which I've mentioned before, is that climate justice is a human right. Climate justice is based on human beings. Sometimes we read stories, journalism reports about, climate change, and there are just a lot of statistics. I even forget like how much impact this story or this climate issue has on people. So climate justice is a human right, it's human-centered. Access to water is not a privilege, no. It's a basic right that should never depend on race, income, or zip code. So this is another important thing I've learned. And I think the residents of Allensworth want investments in a sustainable water infrastructure, which is something they're already doing. They want affordable technology to treat the contamination, the arsenic contamination in their water. And of course, they want equitable representation in the state's and county water decisions. So I think that's a nutshell of everything I've learned through their journey and what they want at the time.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that, Neenma. And so now we have some time for audience questions. So if you have any questions for Neenma, please feel free to use the chat to pose them or use the Q&A function. I see that already we have a question from Shelley Gordon, who would like to know, did the film drive more equitable policy? Uh, can you speak more about that, Neenma?
Yeah, so at the time, we haven't seen any equitable policy being, established as a result of the film, but we're hoping that something would change because we just published this film about, I think, 2 months ago. But I would like to mention that Allensworth already has a technology on ground that is being tested that can actually remove arsenic from the water. And that was part of, the documentation that we were filming. Dr. Asha Gadgil, who is a great researcher, UC Berkeley researcher, has developed this technology that can remove arsenic from the water. And he has tested this in India and it works. But the difference between India and the States is the fact that the cost of labor differs. So in India, of course, you can pay way lower wages to get people to work. But here in the States, different because, you have to pay more, you have to pay health insurance, you have to the cost of wages are different here. So I think that's the major issue that he mentioned to us. It's not about the technology working, but it's about how can they sustain it? Like how can they actually use it? How can they get someone that can run it daily? And they're having conversations now with residents. Maybe they can create some kind of timetable where people can sh have shifts and do this as, an act of service because honestly, I don't know where the funding is coming from to pay someone to just be there. I don't know, but Dr. Asher Gadgil is currently working on helping them with the arsenic removal. So,
Um, Thank you, Neenma. Okay, so we have a couple more questions coming in. The next one is from Kathleen. And Kathleen asks, how much of this material can be included and used by a historical organization launching their Science Sleuth project?
um, I mean, you can use as much as you need from it, because it's published publicly. We have a paper that we also published, at UC Berkeley that's also is also made, public. You can use it, you can take out of it and create or add to your teaching as long as it's going to benefit every other person, you can use it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. See, Kathleen is responding in the chat. Okay. Um, And Kathleen, if you need a more in-depth explanation or if we didn't quite answer your question, please let us know and we'll make sure we get you the answer you need, okay? Next is Kim, who asks, or says rather, this is such an inspiring story of resilience. How did you learn about this town and how did you form relationships with the people to get them comfortable with being vulnerable and sharing their stories?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that question because that was one of the hardest parts. So I learned about this story through my uncle. So my uncle had a friend that used to stay in a town close to Allensworth. And at the time, I was looking for a thesis topic. Me and Isabella, we were like, what are we going to do our thesis documentary on? We had a list of topics, but nothing really spoke to us, nothing really connected. We have to do something that you're passionate about. And one evening, I was talking to my uncle that I'm trying to like come up with a topic, something, something I can connect to, something that I'm passionate about. And I don't know, it's not coming. And then he told me, oh my God, that there's this black town that one of my friends used to stay close to that they have water issues. Maybe you want to look into that. And that was it. That was all he said. And I was like, what's the name of the black town? And he's like, Allensworth. And I was like, okay. And then I went to my room, I typed Allensworth on my computer, and I saw all this information about Allensworth and the water issue and the arsenic and the rich history. And I'm like, this is my thesis topic. I don't know. This is it. And I texted Savella immediately. I'm like, girl, we have our thesis documentary topic. And she was so excited. But that's just the beginning. The real work started. And I kept researching and reading stories about Allensworth. And I remember there was a story I read from the San Francisco Chronicle about Allensworth. And as I was reading the story, I saw that Sherry Hunter, who's the main character of the documentary, was quoted. I was like, okay, so this woman is, she's media savvy. She's open to talking to the press. So maybe she might want to talk to me. But it's different because this is going to be a documentary. So let me try and see if she's, able to do this. And I reach out to the reporter that wrote the story and I tell her that, I'm a student at UC Berkeley and I really love your story and I want to make a documentary on Allensworth. Can you put me in contact with Sherry Hunter? And she's like, of course, let's go for coffee and talk more. And we go for coffee and we talk more. And she gives me the contact of Sherry Hunter, Denise Kadara, which is Sherry's sister, who's also involved in the fight for clean water in Allensworth, and Kayode Kadara, who's another resident in Allensworth. So the journey begins. I reach out to all of them. And Denise and Coyote were, excited, but also kind of on the fence. But when I reached out to Sherry, she was like, girl, let's do this. Girl, let's do it. In her words, she says, let's win our next Oscar. So, and she was so excited. And that was all the motivation I needed. And honestly, that was the beginning of everything. And then every other person started falling into place. Talking to the Latino family, we talked to a Latino family in the film, and they have like this history of cancer. Like they've stayed in Allensworth for the past like 60 years. Like their family has had cancer, which is something that is associated with arsenic. If you take arsenic contaminated water over a period of time, you can have cancer. Now that family, it was so hard to find a Latino family to actually talk to us on camera because of all the, ICE raids and the issues that are going on right now in the country. But we were able to build trust with that family. And honestly, I think explaining to them why we're doing this, and they also saw that it was not like we are just trying to like, take advantage of them. We also cared truly about the issue. I think it comes through like when you're genuine and you're not just trying to like, just do whatever. And they saw that and they tapped into the vision, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
Oh, I'm grateful too, because now we have this incredible story that we get to learn about, and hopefully it will lead to some kind of lasting change. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question, and so I'm going to try to combine a couple that we have. So I see that both Bisola and Cheryl have asked questions, and now Tina just added a question to the chat. So, uh, could you touch on whether um, the city or county that will benefit from the technology that you discussed is able to invest or willing to invest in the technology? Do you know if there is any consideration for starting in um, internship program to help the program continue? And how is the government responding to the issue of the contaminated water in Allensworth?
Okay. So I don't know what the internship, I don't understand that question, but the government, how they're responding to this. So they have actually helped in quotes. So their help was digging a well 3 miles east from Allensworth. So they, dug that well, and at the time, the arsenic levels were very low. According to the state reports that we read, there is a particular level of arsenic that they say is not harmful. So they dug that well at the time, and at the time, the arsenic levels in that well was low, was below what they said was not harmful, right? But the thing about arsenic is very tricky because the levels of arsenic varies from day to day. So sometimes it'll be low, sometimes it could be higher, and it's just not safe. And according to Dr. Gadgil Ashok, who's the researcher that we featured in the documentary, he said whether it's 1% of arsenic in the water, it does not matter. As long as there's arsenic in the water and it's consumed over a period of time, it could lead to several diseases. Um, and it's very interesting because we were talking to Sherry, our main character, about this, and she said, yeah, they did that, but it's not really helpful because if you ask those, those state government officials that came up with this idea, will they drink the water? Even if it was 0.1% of arsenic, will they be comfortable to have their family drink that water? Obviously not. So why would you think the community members in Allensworth should just take it because it's lower than the arsenic level that they say that they say is safe. So that is what was done so far. Yeah.
Okay. And we got some clarification from Cheryl. Cheryl was sharing that they were thinking of a college internship program partner with local colleges and universities, perhaps to help as a solution to the wages problem that is, a prevention to, um, you know, working to resolve the issue. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. Like that's actually such an amazing idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, if you want to talk more about it, you can always send me a mail and we can follow up on that conversation. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, that is our time. So thank you so much, Nima, for being with us today and sharing more about your project. I believe that the link to Nima's documentary is in the chat if you all want to watch. But otherwise, thank you, Nima, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.